It's usually around 4 in the morning when I hear her. Not a loud sound, just the soft clink of porcelain, the faint slide of a drawer, the careful way someone sets a kettle down without wanting to wake the house. I lie still and listen. For a few seconds, I forget. My name is Thomas Hale. I'm 89 years old, and I have outlived almost everyone who once knew me well. The doctors say my heart is tired. That's the word they use. Tired. I suppose that's as good a word as any. But it isn't my heart that keeps me awake. It's the kitchen. We bought this house in 1968. It smelled like dust and someone else's cooking. The cabinets were painted a pale green that Helen hated. She said it looked like hospital walls. Helen was my wife. She had a way of saying things without raising her voice, and somehow they carried more weight that way. We painted the cabinets white the first summer. I remember her standing on a chair, hair tied up in a scarf, telling me I was doing it wrong. I remember pretending to be offended just to hear her laugh. The kitchen was always her room, not because she had to be there, because she liked being there. Early mornings were her favorite. Before the children woke up, before the phone started ringing, before the day asked anything of her, she'd move slowly, turn on the small light above the stove. The rest of the house still dark. She'd hum sometimes, not a real song, just something under her breath. I didn't notice how much that sound held the house together. Back then, I was busy. I worked at the factory on Miller Road. 32 years on the same floor. The machines were loud, and by the time I came home, my ears rang and my patience ran thin. Helen would be in the kitchen when I walked in. Always something simmering. Always that small crease between her eyebrows when she was thinking. She'd ask about my day. I'd shrug, say it was fine. I thought that was enough. There are certain evenings that come back sharper than others. One in particular, it was raining. I remember the way my boots left dark marks across the linoleum. She was standing at the counter, slicing carrots. The children were in the living room, arguing over the television. She said, very quietly, "Thomas, do you ever wonder if this is all we'll ever do?" I didn't understand the question. All we'll ever do? I said. She nodded, still slicing. Work, cook, sleep, start over. I told her that's what life was. That was good enough. That we had a roof and healthy kids, and that most people would be grateful. She didn't argue. She just nodded. I thought I had settled something. Now, when I replay that moment, I realize she wasn't asking for a better life. She was asking if I saw her inside the one we had. I kept thinking there would be more time to listen properly. Time is a strange thing when you're young. It stretches out like a road you assume won't end. The children grew up and left. The house got quieter, but Helen stayed in the kitchen. She tried taking classes once. Pottery. Tuesday nights. I remember because it meant I had to heat my own dinner. I wasn't cruel about it. I just made small comments. About the mess. About the cost. About how tired she seemed afterward. She stopped going after 3 weeks. Said it wasn't for her. I didn't question it. Years passed like that. Ordinary years. Birthdays. Christmas dinners. Small arguments about bills and leaky faucets. If you had asked me then whether I loved my wife, I would have said yes without hesitation. And I would have meant it. But love, I've learned, can sit in the same room as neglect and not even recognize it. The night she first mentioned the pain, we were in the kitchen again. Always the kitchen. She was leaning against the counter, one hand pressed lightly to her side. It's probably nothing, she said. I agreed. That was our pattern. If it could be nothing, we chose nothing. By the time it wasn't nothing, it had already been something for too long. Hospitals have a smell you never forget. Clean and metallic and hopeless all at once. She was smaller in that bed than I'd ever seen her. Her hands looked like paper. One afternoon, when the light was coming through the blinds in thin stripes, she said, "I used to love the mornings." I told her she still would, that she'd be home soon. She looked at me in a way that made my chest tighten. "Thomas," she said, "did you ever hear me?" I said yes. Of course I said yes. I didn't know what else to say. She died in October. The trees outside the hospital were already bare. The house was too quiet when I walked back in alone. For weeks, I couldn't step into the kitchen without feeling like I'd entered someone else's memory. I stopped turning on the small stove light. I used the overhead instead. Brighter, harsher. I told myself I was adjusting. But some nights, I would wake up certain I heard the kettle, certain I heard the soft scrape of a chair. The first time it happened, I sat up in bed and almost called her name. I didn't. The sound faded. Grief doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it settles in the walls, in the plumbing, in the way the floorboards respond to weight that isn't there anymore. Years have passed now, more than I expected to have without her. The children visit when they can. They move carefully around me, like I'm something fragile. They don't know about 4 in the morning. They don't know that sometimes I sit at the kitchen table in the dark, waiting to see if the air will shift the way it used to when she walked in. There's a cup in the cabinet I've never moved, a thin crack along the rim. She refused to throw it out. "It still holds coffee," she'd say. I understand that now. There are so many things that still held something, even with the cracks. I just didn't see them in time. Last winter, I found one of her old scarves in the back of a drawer. It still smelled faintly of her perfume. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding it longer than I meant to. I tried to remember the last full conversation we had in that kitchen before the hospital. Not about groceries, not about the kids. Something real. I couldn't. That frightens me more than death. Memory thins out. It keeps the shape of things, but loses the details. And I am left with sounds. The drawer, the kettle, the quiet humming. Sometimes I wonder if my mind is being kind to me, letting me borrow her for a few seconds before dawn. Or maybe it's reminding me of something I missed when she was standing right in front of me. I used to think the worst thing that could happen was losing someone. I know now it's realizing, too late, that you never fully arrived while they were still there. There was a morning, not long before she got sick, when I woke early and found her already in the kitchen. The sky outside was still dark blue. She was standing by the window, holding her mug with both hands. I almost went back to bed. Instead, I sat down across from her. We didn't talk much, just sat there. I remember thinking it felt unnecessary. A quiet pause before the day began. If I could step back into any moment, it would be that one. Not to change it, just to stay longer. To let the quiet stretch without rushing it away. I didn't know it was a gift. I thought it was ordinary. I hear her again now, some mornings. Not every day, just enough. The house settles. The pipes knock softly, and there it is. The suggestion of movement. I don't get up as quickly anymore. My legs aren't steady in the dark. But sometimes I whisper, "I'm here," just in case. And in those seconds before the sound disappears, I feel the weight of all the mornings I walk past her without really seeing. All the questions I answered too quickly. All the small dismissals that seemed harmless at the time. They weren't loud. They were just consistent. And consistency has a way of shaping a life. I don't think she would want me sitting here tangled in regret. She wasn't dramatic. She just wanted to be heard. It took me almost a lifetime to understand what she meant. And by the time I did, the kitchen was quiet. Completely quiet. I'm not afraid of dying. At 89, you make a certain peace with the narrowing of things. What unsettles me is how clearly I can hear her now. Clearer than when she was alive and standing 3 feet away. Maybe that's the cruelty of time. Or maybe it's just the way memory works when there's nothing left to distract you. I don't know how many more mornings I have. The doctors avoid specifics. But when I lie in bed before dawn, listening for the kettle, I feel the thinness of the air between then and now. And I realize something that sits heavier than I expected. The kitchen was never just a room. It was where she waited for me to arrive. And I was always just a little late. I'm tired now. More than my heart. More than my body. tired in that quiet place where the past keeps replaying itself with sharper edges. If you've stayed with me this long, maybe you've heard something familiar in these walls. Maybe there's a room in your own house that carries a voice you didn't fully answer. You don't have to say anything about it. Just sit with it for a while. Sometimes that's all that's left.